Hey, for all you Phillies fans, Cole Hamill has 7 Ks through 6 shutout innings. All right, I'm just here to make an introduction of a very special guest. Someone we're very, very lucky to have involved with Campaign for Liberty. He's a champion swimmer, a graduate of University of Texas, a chemical engineer, a real expert on logistics and budget management. Dr. Paul's oldest son and the chairman of Campaign for Liberty. Please help me in giving a very warm round of applause to Ronnie Paul.
Thank you, Jesse. When he said, I'd like you to introduce your dad tonight, and then he said, you can talk as long as you want. And I said, are you sure that's what you want me to do, Jesse? But anyway, my dad's been introduced many times, as he has spoken many times, as most of y'all know, and they usually start with long lists of awards and recognitions he's gotten, all well-deserved, of course. But I said, maybe I'll do something different. So I thought of some jokes to tell, but they really want to listen to him. And I said, well, maybe I'll tell some stories when I was a kid and about he mowing the yard or making me mow the yard. And I said, no, they don't want to hear that either. So I decided I wouldn't talk that long. But anyway, I did want to make one point, because there was one question I used to ask him, because, y'all heard his speech. It is kind of the same one, and I have a joke about that, but I'm not going to tell it. But I've heard it for a long time. We'd sit around the table and we'd talk, and I guess in the innocence of a young child, you ask the same question that we still ask: how do we make it change? What do we do? We see it, we hear it, and he told me the same thing back then that he's telling us today. And he goes, it takes enough people to know and understand and want to change to make it happen. The progress that Campaign for Liberty has made this year, coming off the tails of the presidential campaign, all of y'all here, the different conferences around the country, I'm seeing what he told me had to happen. So with no more, I just wanted to leave that. I'm going to let him tell you the real details. Dr. Paul.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. The lights are pretty bright up here. There are some people out there. I hear you, I hear you. That's great. And thank you very much for coming. And Ronnie, thank you for coming and introducing me. He hasn't been out on too many of these, but he does it when he can get a chance. Now, Ronnie still goes by Ronnie. Once in a while he gets called Ron. But he is preferred. He said one Ron Paul and his family's enough. So he sort of likes Ronnie. And his wife tonight is with him, Peggy. And she goes by Peggy. And we have some other members of the family. You already met one. He's contracted in the family. He has a marriage contract and is married to our granddaughter, Valerie, who's sitting down here. Where's there? Oh, okay. And there's Jesse. You introduced Ronnie a few minutes ago. But we have another son that's been in the news, and you may have heard his name. I still call him Randy, but he doesn't prefer that. He prefers Rand. And a lot of people have talked about his name, and I still get that question quite frequently. Did we name him Rand after Ayn Rand? The answer is no, we didn't do that. His name is Randall. We called him Randy, but he now informs us that he is Rand. And that's been that way a couple years. But he is involved in politics. He has announced, I think it's for a Senate race, and I have strongly endorsed him for the Senate race in Kentucky. Now, we're having more and more candidates that have been associated with the Campaign for Liberty, either in office or running for office, and they're very numerous. And there was a large number elected last go-around, many at the state level and even county levels, and the numbers are probably much greater than many of us even realize. But there's another individual very much involved in our campaign, was an economic advisor for us, has been in the news a lot, and he has announced today, Peter Schiff for the Senate, Connecticut. So I believe the Campaign for Liberty is having an impact, but I think it's only the beginning of the impact we're going to have. You know, one thing that's been in the news a lot here in this last week has been whether or not you're allowed to shout out on the House floor that people tell lies. And I sort of prefer a different technique, not doing too much shouting, and hopefully persuade people. And I didn't endorse the shouting, but I also didn't endorse the politicizing of those events. And this whole idea of sanctions and condemning, the Republicans have done it recently too. Nancy Pelosi claimed that the CIA lied to her. Can you imagine the CIA lying? You know, so when the Republicans wanted to sanction her, I just thought it was all partisan politics. I wouldn't do that. In the same way with this, I didn't vote to condemn the congressman for shouting out. But there are some lies in Washington that I'm much more concerned about. The lie that I think that is so pervasive in government, and it's been around for a long time, it's been around since Plato, and that's called the noble lie. And that is that it's the obligation of government to lie to the people because only the people in charge know what's best, and the common man doesn't know, and therefore it is up to the responsibility of the government to lie to the people. Remember the neocons? I mean, that's what they believe it in their heart, that they must lie to the people in order to get the people persuaded. And that's generally been the case, whether it's the Straussian neocons of the modern age or whether it was Plato originally. It's really the debate on what the responsibility of government ought to be. Should government run our lives, or are we supposed to run our own lives? That's what I believe in, and it's our lives, not theirs. There's been a few lies told about in the medical debate, and like persistently. And a lot of times it's outright lies. Most of it's distortion. And generally, it's an argument between those, once again, who believe that the government should be involved in this type of activity, or the marketplace, and free individuals should make these decisions and solve these problems. But you know, the other night I was on a debate. I think it was on CNN. And it was with a couple other doctors, and one doctor said, yeah, Dr. Paul sounds like he's serious, and that sounds good. But let me tell you, the one thing I disagree with him is he has way too much confidence in the goodness of man. And that was my sin and my crime, that I placed too much confidence in the goodness of man. That does not mean that man is good and perfect. But if you don't place confidence in the goodness of individuals and the inclination of most individuals to take care of themselves, where do you place your confidence? Into the goodness of a few individuals in Washington, D.C. to run our lives? And that's essentially what they believe in. And not only do they believe that the governments, local governments, city governments, state governments, national government, but we're in an age now, because this system is coming apart, especially financially, that they're looking at one more level. They want world government, so we have a battle on our hands to not only win back our sovereignty as individuals, but we want to make sure that we don't lose our national sovereignty to international world government. Actually,